If you look at countries where there are strong leaders, leaders that are not afraid to take decisions in the interest of their country and people, you find that those are the countries that stand out, as Guyana is right now in the world, because we are rated as the fastest growing economy in the world.
Mhm.
And this didn't happen because of the passage of time, because of a mistake or incidental. It happens because of the strong leadership by President Ali and his government. It happened because we have managed the economy so well. It happened because we have managed the sectors, the different sectors so well, and using the revenue from the sectors to ensure that we build out a new modern Guyana where all Guyanese can benefit and will benefit, especially the oil and gas sector, because as you're aware, oil and gas brings in quite a lot of revenue into a country. And it's not only about the direct revenue that flows from oil and gas, but it is because of the many benefits that comes with investment in the oil and gas sector. And we have seen that over the last few years, especially with the local content legislation. I would say that that was probably one of our biggest success over the last 5 years in managing the oil and gas sector, among many others. But I want to single out the local content legislation because this legislation has brought tremendous benefit to Guyanese, whether directly or indirectly. And we have seen that in the transportation sector, in the accommodation, in catering, across many other services that are being offered to the oil and gas sector. The local content legislation would have opened up that opportunity for Guyanese and Guyanese businesses directly. So that I think is a big plus for us as a country because there are many oil producing countries in the world that have not moved to local content legislation,
Right.
but
Mm-hmm.
rather they stop at a policy, a
Policy.
local content
Yeah.
policy. We would have taken that strong decision. And again, it comes back to the leadership that I spoke of earlier when President Ali and Vice President, who has direct oversight of the oil and gas sector, said in no uncertain terms that we are going to have a local content legislation in place. We are going to hold consultation. We're going to speak with the oil companies. We're going to speak with the local private sector, which we did. And we are going to pass that local content bill in the parliament and implement local content in Guyana. And we have
Mm-hmm.
seen the success of that. We have seen tremendous amount of expansion in the private sector
Mm-hmm.
where our local businesses are now enjoying the benefits of an oil economy. And
Mm-hmm.
that by its that single legislation, I think, would have transformed the way in which the local private sector do business
Mm-hmm.
because we have seen how our local private sector would have taken the risk and the challenge of investing, retooling, refinancing, and expanding their operation, and how they would have benefited significantly over the last few years.
So, based on that metric, the importance of leadership and what we've seen over the last 5 years and what's expected to come in the second term of your government, you believe that it's safe to say Guyana is already on the cusp of entering that golden age?
I would definitely agree with that. We are already on that road
Mm-hmm.
to prosperity, or as you refer to it as the golden age.
Mm-hmm.
And I often say that this is the most exciting period in the history of our country. This is the period where we get to build out the new modern Guyana that our ancestors, our foreparents, our grandparents, and everyone who worked and toiled and worked tirelessly to build out this new Guyana where all of us as Guyanese can live peacefully and enjoy a good life. If that's the golden age, well, then certainly we are on the road to achieving that. We've already started over the last few years, and I can assure you over the next 5 years under President Ali leadership, we will definitely continue on that road and even improve as we move along to ensure that the economy is managed in a way where Guyanese, regardless of where you live, whether it's Port Beast, whether it's Georgetown, whether it's Interior, whether it's Region 10, that you're part of this developmental trust and plan too.
I want to remind of something you said earlier, which is we are the fastest growing economy, and many Guyanese they've picked up on that saying, that phrase. But there are also some within our society who are saying, "Hey, this is only on paper. What say you?"
That's a very good question, Kiana. And sometimes it's difficult in a small society like Guyana
Mm-hmm.
to divorce ourselves from our political affiliation
Mm-hmm.
and to make honest comments. Because I truly believe that most, if not all, Guyanese would have benefited in some way or the other over the last 5 years under the PPP civic government.
Mm-hmm.
Whether your child is going to University of Guyana free, whether your child or someone you know is studying through the Gold Scholarship
Mm-hmm.
free, whether your children are in school and they enjoy the reinstated and increase because we care cash grant, whether you would have benefited from a turnkey house or a house lot or a young professional housing, or somewhere or the other you would have benefited cash grant, somewhere or the other you would have benefited. If you look at today one of our biggest problem, two, as a matter of fact, two of the biggest challenges that we have in our country today is one, traffic. Everywhere you
Yes.
go, there's a major complaint. And it's
Yep.
not only in Region 4. You go to Region 6, you go to Region 3, you go to Region 10 in Linden, traffic is the biggest issue. But I like to say, it sounds funny sometimes, but I like to say that the traffic issue that we have, it's a good problem. We recognize it's a problem, but it's a good one to deal with. It's better you deal with traffic congestion than you deal with a country where a person cannot afford to buy a motor car, where a young person who is working now cannot afford to buy a motor car. That would have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
But today we are in a situation where almost every Guyanese household, especially on the coast, can buy a motor car, if not more than one. Because if you go around some of the new housing schemes, you will see almost every household there are two or three motor vehicles parked there. So that's why I say it is a good problem in a way that we have managed the economy so well. We have created opportunities for all Guyanese, whether they're enjoying a better job with a decent salary, whether they are young entrepreneurs, whether they're small business owners and they're growing into medium scale businesses, whether they're part of the private sector, that all Guyanese are now in a better position. And if you look in the past, one series, for example, PHH or PXX, it took us almost 2 years in the past to
Mm-hmm.
complete that 9,999 vehicles registration. Today, it is taking us 3 to 4 months to
Mm-hmm.
complete one of that series. It simply means that people are in a better position today.
Mm-hmm.
And these things did not happen by mistake, as I mentioned before. Because in the past, they could have done this, but they didn't because there were no opportunity. There weren't many opportunities for them. Many of them were unemployed. And that is the second problem I want to speak of. Because when we took office in 2020, that was one of the biggest cry. You go to Borbis in the sugar belt, the sugar workers that were sent home, they were unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them were doing 1 or 2 day work as construction worker to maintain their family. Many of the people on the coast were going into the interior to work because there weren't many opportunities on the coast, especially for the remuneration that they're looking for. But today we have seen the total opposite. Imagine in 5 years, we have turned that around where there is a shortage, a severe shortage of labor now.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen
And
quite a few posters calling for applicants to come in and
definitely.
receive
And
training.
and in my sector, for example, you ask any sawmiller, any
Mm-hmm.
logger, that's the biggest problem. They say, Minister, we can't find worker.
Yeah.
You ask any miner, Minister, we can't find worker. That's our biggest challenge.
Even drivers are
Because
hard to
even
find.
drivers,
Mm-hmm.
because these people that used to work in the interior in the past, they have the similar opportunity on the coast
Right.
where they're earning almost the same amount of money because of the opportunities created based on the investment over the last few years, both by government and the private sector, that have created opportunities for people. So those are the two when I say two challenges that we're faced with, but they're good challenges because it simply means that our people lives are transforming every single day.
So it's safe to say that in the last 5 years, based on government's management, oil, the benefits of the oil sector, it has touched the lives of every Guyanese. And what has been put in place, the foundation that has been put in place, it will also touch the lives of future generations.
Definitely, definitely, and that has always been our promise to the Guyanese people, that we are going to manage the oil and gas sector in a manner where every single Guyanese will benefit from it. That we are going to manage the oil and gas sector in a manner that there is transparency and accountability, and we're going to manage it in such a way that Guyanese are not locked out or left out of the sector. Because if you look at many oil producing countries, when the international oil companies come to that country, they usually bring their suppliers with them. They build their own ecosystem around them to supply them with goods and services. In many countries, this is what happened. Right? And the locals are left on the outside just as bystanders, or they just look on. Today, because of the way in which we manage the oil and gas sector, our local private sector are playing an integral part in the provision of goods and services to the oil and gas companies because of that local content legislation. We have over, I think right now it's over 7,000 Guyanese who are trained and are employed in the oil and gas sector. And I would say maybe another 7,000 Guyanese who are employed indirectly through the oil and gas sector. And this has happened over such a short period of time. And we have shown that we, in terms of transparency and accountability, that is serious for us, because we have seen in many oil producing countries, revenue and the revenue from oil and gas can be a blessing or it can be a curse to many countries.
Indeed, indeed.
And we have seen over the short 5 years that the oil and gas sector and the revenue has been a blessing to us, because that revenue is being used wisely. And you know the Natural Resources Fund, that bill was revised, amended, or rather repealed. And then we passed that bill in Parliament on I think it's 28th of December, if my memory serves me, 2021. The same night we passed the local content bill. And I mentioned that date because I wanted our viewers to see that it is only almost a little over a year after we took government, even though we took government during COVID, that we kept our promise that we are going to repeal the old bill, which didn't make sense to us because that was passed by the AP and UAFC after the no confidence motion, which gave the Minister of Finance all the powers possible to use that account. We said that we are going to repeal it and we're going to pass a bill with stronger measures, with better control, with proper oversight. And we did that just over a year after we got into government. And that act would show you now that there is only two ways in which money can flow out of the Natural Resources Fund. And just for our viewers, I just want to say that this Natural Resource Fund, or the revenue in this fund, it is not in a bank sitting somewhere in Guyana, because there's a misconception that, we have access to this money. It doesn't work like that. It is in a reserve bank in the US, and the only way money can flow out of that account is if you have approval from the National Assembly. You must have approval in Parliament. And one is when it flows into the national budget, which is debated for an entire week, which is cross-examined and questions asked of the ministers for an entire week in Parliament. Then you have the Auditor General to check on expenses. Then you have the Public Accounts Committee in Parliament that check on these expenses too. So there are so many layers of safeguards again to ensure that there's transparency and accountability. The second way in which money can flow out of that account is if there's a national disaster, a natural disaster of national proportion, and we need revenue to restore people to where they was before. And again, it must have parliamentary approval. So managing the sector and ensuring that the revenue that flows from it trickle down to our people is important. And we have seen that. We have seen that, if I may speak, on infrastructure.
Mhm.
Because everywhere you look in our country, and I'm sure the people listening to us here would agree with me, every single way you look in this country, there's a concrete road.
Mhm.
There is a new highway being built. There is a new bridge being built. There is something being done in all parts of Guyana. It's not only Region 4. You go into the hinterland communities, it's the same.
But I'm glad you raised that point because there's also the concern that look, you know what? Maybe we don't need all these roads. Maybe we don't need all these highways. Why don't you just transfer some of this money? Why don't you give every Guyanese 500,000 transfer probably every quarter? There's a number of proposals out there. Why has the government resisted that temptation?
Kiana, I've heard this before. We've heard this
Mm-hmm.
from the AP and UFC when they were in government. If
Mm-hmm.
you can recall, they were going to give every family 5,000 US, I think,
Mm-hmm.
which makes absolutely no sense because if you total the amount of household that we have in Guyana, you multiply that by 5,000 US, is way above the revenue that we're receiving from oil and gas now. Because remember, we're still paying back Cots Bank. We're still
And when you say cost bank, can you break
all
that
right.
down for our
So
listeners, please?
Cause Bank for our viewers. There are some countries in the world that invest in oil and gas,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that they will take money from their consolidated fund
Mm-hmm.
and they will invest with the oil companies, maybe put 2 billion, 3 billion US dollars into the investment and into the exploration of oil and gas.
So they're one of the
In
players.
right, they
Got you.
become one of the player, but they've
Mm-hmm.
invested.
Mm-hmm.
In Guyana's case, we have not invested a single dollar with these oil companies.
Okay.
Exxon, Hess Chevron,
Mm-hmm.
and CNOOC,
Mm-hmm.
they are the investors. They've
Mm-hmm.
invested all their monies in the Stabroek Block,
Mm-hmm.
exploration, production, seismic, every single thing. And based on the agreement, the expenses that are related to petroleum activities go into what we call the cause bank.
So all of the expenses pertaining to what's happening offshore, it
Pertaining
goes
to
into this
petroleum
pool,
activities,
petroleum
which is
activities.
prescribed
It
clearly,
goes into this
is
bank,
going to this cause bank.
cost bank. Good. Gotcha.
In this cause bank,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the production sharing agreement,
Mm-hmm.
there is a 75%
Mm-hmm.
payback to this cause bank. So
Mm-hmm.
it simply means that out of every 100 barrels of oil produced,
Mm-hmm.
75 barrel goes towards paying that cause bank.
Mm-hmm.
And of the 25 that remain, Guyana gets 50% of that.
Gotcha.
So right now, our share of the oil is 12 and a half barrels of oil out of every 100 that is produced,
Gotcha.
plus 2% royalty.
Mm-hmm.
That is our share. That is what we receive now.
Mm-hmm.
But once Cause Bank is paid off, hopefully soon, once Cause Bank is paid off, then it simply means that there is no expense. There is no expense. We have paid back, or put it this way, we have paid back our loan. We have cleared our expenses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only profit that you're receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that out of every 100 barrels of oil produced, then we will get 50.
Mm-hmm.
And the Covies will get 50 among themselves.
Okay.
So just imagine, put that into context. Just imagine how much we are doing now and how well we are managing the sector. That you see development across our country. We are rated as the fastest growing economy in the world. People's lives are being transformed. People are living a better life today. And we are only receiving 12 and a half barrels of 100.
So this lottery ticket is just going to get bigger and
Just
bigger.
imagine when we start receiving 50 out of every 100.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we keep saying that we have not really started to receive the true revenue from oil and gas as yet. Once we pay back Cause Bank in a few years from now, then we will truly receive the revenue from oil and gas.
What you'd say the crown
And
jewel of
exactly,
the
and
revenues.
then you will see true imagine what we're doing now
Mm-hmm.
with this amount that we're collecting. Just think about what we will do in the future. That's why when we say to Guyanese, especially young Guyanese, the future for us is a bright one. So
I know I took you away from
no, but getting back to
the
the
cash
question
transfers.
of cash
Yes.
transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a failed model. It's a model that has not worked in any part of the world. Now let's look at a few countries. Let's look at the U.S. Right, many of these people who have been called in for cash transfer, some of them live in the U.S. Some of them have relatives in the US because we're so connected. And I want them to answer us if there is any cash transfer given to them in the US. The US is one of the most powerful countries in the world. The US produces probably the most oil in the world among oil producing countries. I've never heard of any cash transfer in the US. Qatar, which is probably one of the richest countries in the world per capita, I've never heard of any cash transfer in Qatar. The UAE, which is Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and other states, Emirates. I've never heard of any cash transfer given. Look at Ghana, look at Angola, and those African countries that produce oil. So this model, it can't work. It don't work. And let's look at it practical in a practical sense.
Mhm.
Now, should we do that? Let's say we're going to give every household 500,000 or whatever the case is
Right.
every month or every quarter, whatever. Now, who will work after that? It's sending a bad message. Who will go to school after that? Because if I'm a student and I'm a Guyanese, I would say, I'm collecting oil money. Why should I go to school? Why should I study? Why should I get a degree? Why should I go and work? Because I'm collecting this money. So it's the culture that would create or the culture behind that.
So it
So
would it would not be an incentive
it,
to.
it will not be an incentive and it will be short-lived.
Mhm.
It will be short-term for sure. And we will end up worse than where we started from. Because oil and gas will not last forever. Oil and gas will end at some point in time, and that is why we have used the revenue from oil and gas sector to continue building out forestry, mining, manufacturing, ecotourism, construction, and the new sectors that are emerging now, agriculture expanding, because we know we have to prepare for oil after gas, life after oil, like
Mhm.
Dubai did, and we have seen their success. So
Mhm.
these are resources that don't last forever. Added to that, with the conversation around the world on climate change and the protests against fossil fuel, trying to cut production, working on cutting demand, the demand for oil and gas will not be the same maybe 10 years from now or 15 years from now. So it is a model that will not work. Because should we do that, we will end up poorer than where we start from. It simply means that we will end up with a country with people who are not educated because they didn't see the need to go to school and further their education and to study and to build a professional career because they're receiving these cash transfers. And the people who have not invested in businesses and who are not working. And we will simply have a country where expats and foreigners will dominate, obviously, because our locals are just sitting back and waiting on their cash transfer at the end of the month. So it is
Mhm.
a failed model. I don't think if you can point me to any country who've successfully done that
Mhm.
around the world, I'll be happy to look at it. But I don't think it's a model that can work or will work.
Hence, the government has been cautious in how it
So
utilizes that
yeah,
instrument.
what we are doing is, for example, the University of Guyana is free. So our
Mhm.
young people, instead of paying to go and study at the university and get a degree or diploma, they don't have to pay anymore. So everybody can go to university once you reach a requirement and get a degree or diploma. Everybody can sign up with a gold scholarship and move on to a PhD or a master's or whatever the case is. We are building 12 new hospitals, so we have care, war, world class healthcare in Guyana.
Mhm.
We are building out the infrastructure, so we have world class infrastructure in Guyana. So it's about setting the environment and preparing the environment where our people can prepare themselves for the future, where our people can make use of the opportunities that are here now and that will come in the future because of the oil and gas sector. And if you
Mhm.
look at that, for example, just look at the building sector,
Mhm.
look at logging, the demand for building materials. Look at mining, the demand for aggregate, stone,
Mhm.
sand, loom. It has increased tremendously, and
Mhm.
mainly because of oil and gas. mainly because people are investing so much because of oil and gas. We
Mhm.
see so much companies coming in and building, mainly because government has the revenue now, added revenue that
Mhm.
we're using to build out public infrastructure. So it has benefited almost every single sector. And that is why it is so important that as a country, we continue to grow those sectors as we grow the oil and gas sector too.
But as you're talking about preparing for the future and what's to come, the government recently approved the seventh oil and gas project for ExxonMobil and its partners. Talk a little bit about Hammerhead and what that milestone means for this country.
Yeah, so we would have signed that production license, I think was Monday of
Mm-hmm.
this week.
Mm-hmm.
That's the seventh project. Or we have four FPSOs offshore presently that are producing. We have the
Yes.
Liza Destiny, the Liza Unity, Prosperity, and we have the biggest FPSO to date, which is the One Guyana
Mm-hmm.
FPSO, which is still in a state of commissioning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have not optimized production on that FPSO as yet. It takes a period of time.
Right.
But once we optimize production on that FPS, hopefully before the year is out, we will be average 900,000 barrels per day. This is something that has never been heard of
Mm-hmm.
in in the oil and gas sector in any part of the world. And if you ask Exxon, if you ask Chevron, you ask any one of these major oil companies, they will tell you that
Mm-hmm.
because I have heard it from them many times
Mm-hmm.
that they've never seen this happen anywhere in the world. Where you discover oil in May of 2015, forest oil in December of 2019, when we took over, our production was just below 100,000 barrels per day. And
Mm-hmm.
in 5 years, it will be 900,000 barrels per day. It has never happened in any part of the world, especially in ultra deep waters.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the quality of our crude is world class. I can tell you that for sure. The demand for Guyana's crude is tremendous. Every time we advertise to market our crude, we attract almost every single major oil and gas trader around the world and oil and gas company around the world. So, Hammerhead will add to that.
Mm-hmm.
Recall too that before Hammerhead, we have Whiptail and Waru.
Right.
Those two FPSOs are under construction right now, one in Singapore and one in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime next year, we're going to commission the Waru. I think it's the Waru FPSO,
Mm-hmm.
Erwitu, right, meaning abundance, an
Mm-hmm.
Amerindian word. So that FPSO will be in Guyana sometime late next year. Then we expect the Jaguar FPSO, which is Whiptail Development, in 2027. And then we are working towards having Hammerhead project, the start of a
Mm-hmm.
Hammerhead project, maybe a year or two after that. And it simply means that by 2030, we'll definitely be close to 1.7 million barrels per day. Now, that is just roughly about 10 years of production. And
Mm-hmm.
to move from zero to 1.7 million barrels in 10 years, it has never been heard of in the oil and gas sector. The tremendous pace at which we are working at. Um, and we have seen over the years too, as promised, that we have strengthened every single production license,
Mm-hmm.
every single environmental permit that we issue to Exxon and the COVIs, which is very critical and important. Because, for example, in the environmental permit, we don't permit flaring unless it's startup or maintenance or an unexpected situation. Other than that, we don't permit flaring. If the company flare beyond that, then they pay a fee to the EPA.
Right.
Right, that is built into the environmental permit.
Mm-hmm.
Also built into that permit is cradle to grave management of waste,
Right.
how water is treated and everything before it's dumped
Mm-hmm.
or re-injected. All of that is included there. So what we have now are model permits and model license that you can use any part of the world in terms of the industry standard. For example, in Hammerhead, which is very important, Hammerhead now will help us to fill that Wales pipeline because, as you're aware, the
Yes.
gas
Yes.
energy project,
Mm-hmm.
that pipeline is a 12-inch pipeline that is all the way from the Stabroek Block till to
But
Wales
I
and
don't
the
mean to
West
cut
Bank.
you, Minister. On this same gas to energy
Mm,
project, just for the benefit of our audience, the government is utilizing, the project utilizes rather, LISA 1 and LISA 2 gas resources.
yeah,
And what you are introducing now here
yeah,
is that the Wales project will
yeah.
also utilize gas from Hammerhead.
Hammerhead, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct because Hammerhead field, it actually has a lot more gas than the other fields.
Okay.
And we have been told by Exxon, confirmed by our technical teams,
Mm-hmm.
that unlike the other developments, they will not use the gas to re-inject in order to optimize production like they do in the other fields.
Mm-hmm.
That is why the LISA 1 and LISA 2 will not be able to fill that pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why Hammerhead is so critical and important.
Oh,
Because
okay.
rather than re-injecting the gas to optimize production,
Mm-hmm.
that gas now would go to the Unity and Destiny FPSO and then offshore through that pipeline offshore to the Wales development area
Okay.
where we are going to build the second power plant because the gas that is guaranteed right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is available right now. So
Mm-hmm.
as soon as that power plant is completed, because I'm not sure if many Guyanese have had the opportunity to move around in the Wales area and East Bank area, but you would see
Mm-hmm.
the towers with the transmission cable
Right.
coming across the river and the new towers going to Hoop and going to Kingston and Sophia, and then we are now going to Borbies. So while we are building out that project there, we are building the new transmission system that will take the power and distribute the power too. At the same time, we're doing that. We're doing a number of substations. We're doing a main control center at Good for Acton, which is behind Eccles, but it's Good for Acton. That main control center is being built there. So all these things are happening. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
because we don't talk about it, people
Right.
don't know, or because you don't live in the area, you don't see it, you don't know what's happening. But the pipeline is already there. 50 million cubic per day is already available, which is enough for the forest power plant, which will come on
Mm-hmm.
stream in a couple months from now.
Right.
And then with Hammerhead being tied into that, it is guaranteed now that we will fill that pipeline over 120 million cubic per day,
Mm-hmm.
which will now accommodate a second power plant, another
Right.
300 megawatts of power. And then, as President Ali would have said, we will have enough gas after the two power plants, the 600 megawatts, for a small fertilizer urea plant,
Right.
which is very critical because we're expanding agriculture.
Right.
So that's the forest project at Wales, which we are guaranteed now that we will fill the pipeline, and we are going to have 600 megawatts of power
Mm-hmm.
because our demand, and that is another indication of development in the country too. Because, for example, when we took over in 2020, the demand for power at peak in Guyana was just over 100 megawatts.
Mm-hmm.
Just over 100 megawatts. Now it is over 250 megawatts. That is the demand, the increase in demand over such a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that translates to the development that is taking place in the country, the amount of new housing schemes, more Guyanese being added to the grid, more people living a comfortable life now, an improvement in the living standard.
Mm-hmm.
It translates to that. It translates to more opportunities in businesses. We are seeing small businesses growing to medium and large scale. We see foreign investors coming in, and all of that we see as development and bring tremendous benefits for people too. Just before I finish with it, I just want to say to our viewers that I like to say this because I believe it in my heart and I know it will happen, that gas to energy project will be the single most transformational project in the history of our country, because that project is going to touch every single Guyanese in some way or the other. And I said that, and some people said, but we are not on the grid. We live in the interior. And then I said to them, the gas to energy project is not only for power generation. Because of the cheap power that we will have from the gas to energy project, clean power, reliable power, we are going to see one of the largest industrial manufacturing park being built out on the west bank of the Mara. That's why we took the project up past Wales.
Tell us a little bit about this park. We've been hearing about this industrial park. What is it going to look like? Who are we modeling it after? Tell us a little bit more about that, why that's important.
So I wouldn't say who we model because I can't think in the Caribbean if there is any such, maybe in Trinidad,
Right.
where you have a lot of manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
But it is to for Guyana to start manufacturing its own products.
Mm-hmm.
Because for too long, we have been exporting primary products.
Mm-hmm.
We export raw materials, we buy back the finished products.
Mm-hmm.
For too long. You check any product that you think of, it has been imported. And that is why we have not really seen the true benefits of our resources, of our products. Even agriculture and natural resources, we have not seen that. So, with cheaper power, reliable power, we intend to see investment, tremendous investment in manufacturing, especially where we can build our own products right here in Guyana, where we can process our fruits and our meat and our vegetables right here in Guyana. So it's an incentive for farmers to start expanding because I know now if you're a pine farmer, you only plant a certain amount because of spoilage. But once we can set up agro processing facility,
Mm-hmm.
then a farmer will feel so comfortable that you know what, I can plant all the land available to me because I have a market for it. If it doesn't sell at border or wherever they sell, then whatever is left over goes to the processing plant and is bottled and preserved and everything for us to export. So there
Wow.
will be a market for that.
So it's really going to give us limitless opportunities to expand in
And imagine the
production.
amount of employment it will create. That's one.
Yes, yes.
Imagine the amount of investment opportunities
Mm-hmm.
for the local private sector, for young people, because there can be many small startup business.
Yes.
You know, and I was joking, I was jokingly saying to someone, check the box of the toothpick that you have on your table. Where is it made? Oh, it is made in China or Indonesia or some other country. I said, but we have one of the biggest forests in the world with a
Mm-hmm.
thousand different species. Why can't we make our own toothpick in Guyana? And that's just a simple idea I'm giving you.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine a young person coming and say, you know what, I'm going to start a toothpick factory in Guyana. And it's not only for the Guyana market. I'm just giving you an example.
Right,
I'm not saying
right.
you have to do that,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just giving you an example. When you do this, it's not only for the Guyana market because the Guyana market is not as big as many others now, but it's
Mm-hmm.
growing. But we have the entire CARICOM market. We can get into the North American market. We can get into the South American market. So there is so much potential. And young people should start looking at business ideas because as President Ali mentioned, there will be grants and low interest loans
Right, with the coming on of the bank.
for startup businesses, especially yes, we're coming
Mm-hmm.
out of the bank that President Ali mentioned, and it's on our manifesto
Yes.
that we will help these young people with their ideas because there are so many young, bright Guyanese out there with the ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they don't want to take the risk and invest their own money, or maybe money that is given to them from their parents. So now there's an avenue for them to have these resources available for them to
Mm-hmm.
take that risk because business is a risk.
Mm-hmm.
But as young people, we need to take risks too because that's how
Yes.
you become successful.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know if you will achieve or not. Otherwise, you
Mm-hmm.
will never know your potential. So there will be so much opportunities for Guyanese, especially the young Guyanese, small businesses, medium scale businesses, large businesses, and manufacturing will transform a country so much. And that's why I was saying that it will benefit the entire country, not only the coast. Yes, the coast will enjoy 50% reduction in electricity
Mm-hmm.
costs, but how will the hinterland communities benefit? They're not on the grid.
Right.
But once we start manufacturing the products locally, obviously it will become cheaper because we're not shipping it from India or China or wherever it comes from.
Right.
We are manufacturing it right here. We're not paying that high shipping costs and the taxes and duties and everything because it is manufactured right here. So taking those products into the hinterland communities means that it will go in at a cheaper cost. So it will reduce the cost of living of the hinterland communities and our Amerindian
Mm.
people. So that is how they will benefit from the project. So it is a project, that is why I say it is probably the single most transformational project in the history of our country.
Minister, I want to ask you two quick questions before we wrap up today's discussion. Guyana launched its first bid round in December 2022, and we have been waiting for some time to see who will be entering the offshore space alongside some big players, such as ExxonMobil and so forth. Now, can you give us some insight as to how soon the government intends, your ministry in particular, how soon you intend to wrap up some of these contracts? And can you also say if CISPRO, the all women led oil and gas company, Guyanese company too, will be part of that signing round?
I heard you stress on the year, Kiana, 2022, and I've heard this only a few days ago too. And yes, it has been since 2022 that we launched that bid round process. In 2023, we did evaluation, and a number of companies would have bid for about 8 of the 14 blocks.
Right.
Um, and they were awarded those blocks, and then we entered into a stage of negotiation. But that is how it worked in the oil and gas sector, especially for a new player like Guyana. This is our very first bid round that we had, and at the same time we were updating our production sharing agreement,
Yes.
which was part of our commitment to ensure that we have or we bring better benefits to Guyana and Guyanese in any new production sharing agreement moving forward. So we were in the process of updating, revising, reviewing, and updating our production sharing agreement to be a model PSA.
Right.
And then and what didn't happen in the past, we had to do is to ensure that there is a PSA for shallow water development and a PSA for the deep water development. Now we may very well have to look at a PSA for near shore or onshore development if the possibility presents itself in the future. So at the same time, we were doing all of that, and then we started the negotiation with these companies, which took a while too because it goes back and forth. Most of these companies are not in Guyana, so most of the time it's virtual. Most of the time it's based on their availability, and we could have moved ahead with a few of these companies already. But what we wanted is to have a single production sharing agreement for all companies in shallow and all the companies in the deep. We didn't want a PSA for X company, a PSA for Y company, a PSA for our company. We wanted a PSA that will be signed by all companies.
So you wanted that uniformity.
Exactly. That is industry standard, and that is world class, and that will bring better benefits to Guyanese in comparison to the 2016 Stabrook PSA. So that took some time, as you would imagine. The negotiation took some time, but I'm happy to say that we have wrapped up. I think about 4 of those PSA will be signed in a month time or so.
This is October we're looking at?
Yes, in October. We have already made contact with those companies. They know themselves by now. So we are looking to sign that agreement in October with those 4 companies. And I think you've pushed me,
One of
Guyana,
them
to
being
say
CISPRO.
whether it's CISPRO. And I think by now Guyana, everyone knows that CISPRO, sorry, a Guyanese company, and I'm very proud that it's a Guyanese company, especially our women folks getting involved in the oil and gas sector. It shows that we're expanding the way we think and taking risk and want to be involved in the oil and gas sector. So it's commendable. 2 blocks actually they bid for, and both were awarded to that company. However, one was in the deep and one in the shallow. To date, we have successfully negotiated the PSA for the shallow, the block in the shallow water
With CISPRO.
with CISPRO. So we're moving ahead with that. And then at some point in the future, once we conclude the negotiation in the deep for the deep one, we will move forward with that.
And I just want to give a quick plug, because I think that this is so important and it's historic for our audience at home. If you may not be aware, CISPRO is an all-women-led Guyanese company that is entering the exploration phase and the exploration space, rather. And I think that it is such an amazing thing to see that women are stepping into this particular space, and they're going to be one of the companies signing this contract.
And if you listen to the president's speech at the United Nations, I think it was on Tuesday. Fortunately, I was there to listen to the president in person at the UN headquarters, and